We're live.
Okay, everybody, I thank you very much for joining us for this panel. This panel, on a personal level, if you listen to our show when we're repping Sinister Creature Con, the Horrific Network, is a panel that is literally 5 years in the making. I have begged Tim and Brian for a Star Wars presence at Sinister Creature Con, and my God, like, what a presence to come back to live conventions too. We have a panel for you guys that literally touches every aspect of the Star Wars franchise, starting with one of the 3 original Tusken Raiders, Mr. Alan Fernandez. Welcome, Alan. My favorite monkey, lizard, and gremlin, Mr. Mark Dodson. This man has really, which you guys may not even realize, touched almost every aspect, if not every aspect of Lucasfilm, and he has donned Lord Vader's suit more than any actor and in any medium anybody probably ever will, Mr. C. Andrew Nelson.
Yes.
And Disney Plus finally added these movies. And we were so happy as a group when they did. Ladies and gentlemen, from the Ewok movie franchise, Caravan of Courage and Battle of Endor, and even most recently a little cameo on the Mandalorian franchise, Mr. Eric Walker and Mrs. Nikki Vitale. So how's everybody doing? Thank you so much for coming. Everybody having a fun day so far?
Yeah, this is great. This is absolutely fantastic. I'm having a blast.
Put this in between us.
Yes, it's great so far. Thank you guys for coming out and listening to us.
Awesome. Thank you.
You guys all touch different aspects of the Star Wars franchise, so I'm curious, and we can start work our way down, how you all found your way to Star Wars.
I'm sorry?
How did you find your way to Star Wars?
I was recruited by Margie Baffin.
Elephant.
He has a friend that was he had a friend that was an elephant, and that's how he got in.
Margie the elephant. Yeah.
Margie was the elephant in the bat costume. Lucas came and wanted the elephant, and because Margie was under my care, I was recruited to be in Star Wars. Next.
Your turn.
Oh, is it mine?
It's fine.
For me, I was trying to get into production, and the only thing that Lucasfilm had open at the time, they were building Skywalker Ranch, and said, well, we need laborers right now, and I said, I'll do anything to get in the company, and I took the job as a laborer and worked at the Kerner Company to help build that studio. Then they put me out at Skywalker Ranch. I was wanting to get in production, but it got around that I played around doing voices, and some of the guys thought I was pretty good, said I should let Ben know. Ben Bird had me come in and try out, and I ended up getting a part of Salacious Crumb. Yeah. And kept pounding nails for the next couple of years while I was after that, and then actually did Gremlins was when I went from pounding nails. It was like, okay, now I can probably do something.
So before that, it was, hey Mark, can you put down that hammer? We need a voice.
Exactly. It really was.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
I started at LucasArts, the game company, and I started off as a customer support representative. So if you bought a LucasArts game in the early 90s and you couldn't get it to run on your computer and you're all angry and you opened up the back of the manual and you found that 800 number, I was the poor sap that answered the phone. I did that for about a year. doing customer support, and then transferred over to the art department. Started at the very bottom of the ladder in the art department as a position called art technician. And the first game that I worked on was a game called Mortimer and the Riddles of the Medallion. If you say you remember that game, you are lying. It did not sell well. I think it sold maybe 3 copies. And but it was a good game about a flying snail. When I started on that project, I was an art technician, but by the time the game shipped, I was lead effects animator and became a senior artist and visual effects supervisor soon after that. But then moved on to Industrial Light and Magic. But while I was working at LucasArts, I got a phone call one day that said, "Hey Andrew, how tall are you?" And that's how I got Vader. And started off doing just live events, and then ended up in the special edition, and in the video games and commercials and everywhere else, and ended up playing Vader 70 times over 12 years. So. Oh, that one's not on here.
Yeah. I was, at the time, I was studying to be an actor. So I was just, happened to, my agent called me one day and said I had a, it's okay. Testing, 1, 2, 3. So I was a working actor at the time, and I had an agent, and the agent said they had an audition for an after-school special. It's like a 1-hour movie, and might play in the afternoon. Of course, I didn't know it was Star Wars related or anything like that. And I was going in for a general interview. They wanted to see if I had the right look for the part, and I wasn't even supposed to read. They said you don't have to go and pick up the script or anything. Just go and meet the producers, see if you're right for the part. And they liked me. They liked me enough that I met with John Cordy and Thomas Smith, who at that time he was the general manager of ILM. And they said, we really like your look, and executive producer, we want to show him, that we do like your look. And of course that was George Lucas. They didn't say who he was. And so we'd like to get you on video. So we know we said that you don't have to read a script, but can you go outside for 10 minutes and study the lines with your father so we can get you on camera? And I said, okay, under one condition. At that time I was a very serious actor, so I had a monologue that I prepared. And I said, if you let me, since you're not giving me enough time to study the script, if you let me prepare the monologue, let me do the monologue as well for this producer, then okay. So I went out and studied the script, came back in, did that, and then did my monologue. But by some sort of weird thing, they forgot to hit record when I was doing the script, but they hit record right before I did the monologue, so that's all that George saw, was me doing this very serious monologue where I'm crying. And I guess George is very sensitive, so when a kid is crying, it's like, I want him into my movie, I guess. So he picked me from that. And then later, I did a screen test with Aubrey Miller, who played Sindel Tawani. They wanted to make sure, they wanted to see if she could do the part because she was only 4 years old. So they wanted to do a screen test with her and also see how we worked together. We went up to Mill Valley at the time because John Cordy, who's the director, was also the producer. Cordy Films produced it with Lucasfilm. And we did the screen test all day long. And then at the end of the day, they wanted to make sure Aubrey wasn't afraid of an Ewok. So they brought out an Ewok on a stick, which was kind of funny. And she loved it, hugged it, thought it was cute like a teddy bear.
Real quick, when you say on a stick, like, it was like...
No, the storms, they weren't, stormtroopers didn't grab them or anything like that and try to...
It was like a delicacy.
Yeah, it kind of sounds like that, doesn't it? But yeah, that's how they went. Well, they had to put them on something, because there was no little people, auditioning with us, so they couldn't get a costume. And anyway, at the end of the day, they said, "Can you give us a couple minutes?" They went in a back room and was looking at the video they took. Then they came out and said, "You guys have the part." It was that. It was very fast. Within a month, I was shooting the movie, so it was very quick. Later, I heard that they did look a lot. They were in New York and other areas, and somehow I came in at the last moment and got the role. So,
Right on.
woo, yeah.
How about you?
All right, is it on? Yeah? Okay, can you hear me? let's see. My high school drama teacher got me an agent, and he sent me on this audition, the first audition, and he told me, he's like, "You're not gonna get this because you're a minor." I was 16, and they don't want to hire a studio teacher, etc. I did know it was for Lucasfilms though, but it was pretty, low key, of course. Went there, they saw me, and I guess for being a little person, I'm little. I didn't realize this, because I hadn't been around other little people. And I hadn't been working in the business either. So they saw me and they were like, "What?" So they hired me to do wicked stunts, because I'm maybe a couple inches different than Warwick, but tiny. And that lasted, I don't know, a week or two or something like that. And then T, the character I played, was a puppet to begin with. And that was Noah, Wilford Brimley's sidekick. And Wilford was just not having it with the puppet. He was like,
Hey, work with no puppet.
"Yes, oh yeah, that's editing it, right?" Yeah. I mean, "I can't do this, I'm not working with a puppet," etc., etc. I get a call one day, it's like, "Your call time has changed, it's 6 a.m. at the creature shop." Next thing I'm at the creature shop and getting a full life cast. Like the whole body, even the head with the straws. They didn't even tell what was really going on, thank God, and they did that. They started building the suit. My parents were up there signing my life away with the contract. And that was pretty much it. You know what I mean? Thank you, Wilford. Right? Rest in peace. Yeah, exactly. The rest is history. And then, it was great.
The thing about Star Wars that will forever hold up, I think, whenever it is watched, is the practical effects and costume design and creature design of what makes Star Wars so special. It taught me that Endor can be terrifying, I can tell you that much, with the Ewok movies. It's not just cuddly teddy bears, that's for sure. But I'm curious, like, on set, that had to have been just like the ultimate playground. Or every time that you, Andrew, suited up as Vader, however whether it be the special editions or, just some kind of like a commercial or an ad or something, like the way Star Wars is never like half-assed. So do you guys have like a favorite story? We can again just start with Alan. Like, do you have a favorite story from filming, being on set, with who you were on set with during the time of production?
Actually, I don't remember who was there, because my focus was on Margie. In fact, a couple of nights before the filming, I spent the night in the trailer with Margie, because she was a little antsy, because we were parked on the side of the road, and the cars going back and forth. It kind of irritated her. In fact, the morning of the shoot, George came and knocked on the back of the trailer and had me wake up at 5 in the morning, and I was still half asleep. There was hay in my hair, and we went to breakfast at 5 in the morning. And Margie by that time was calm. Now, when we were going back down into the valley, because of Margie being so heavy, we had to jump out of the trailer and throw rocks under the back wheels of the trailer to slow it down. And it took 4 hours to cool the brakes before we got moving again. What I remember when we took the costume off Margie, she was soaked, totally soaked in sweat. And we let her go up on the ridge to cool her down, and she was up on this ridge, but she kept one eye on the trailer. She could see the trailer, and she knew that was home, but she wouldn't go any further. But up on the ridge, down below the ridge was a highway, I think Highway 2112, whatever it was. And the cars did not even slow down. They said, no, can't be an elephant up there on the ridge. So they didn't slow down at all. They kept driving. That's what I remember the most.
Well, for me, I had built this, helped build the sound studio for Ben Burt. And he had me come in, and when I walked into the sound studio, I remember saying, oh, it turned out beautiful. And Ben was like, oh, that's right, like you were a carpenter or a laborer, like you built this room, didn't you? And I was like, yeah, but I didn't get to see it finished, because then they came in and did all the finish, you know, like we did all the place, but I was on more of the framing and all that. And then she was like, oh yeah. So for me, I mean, felt pretty good to go in and then I worked with Ben for a little while. I was there to try out for Admiral Akbar. And he handed me the script where Admiral Akbar is describing how they're going to go in and blow up the Death Star, when the hologram of the Death Star comes up. And it's very wordy, and it's a lot of, and I got really nervous. With the script. I'm looking over it going, oh my God, what am I? He had described the character, and I told him, I started shaking so bad holding the script, and there was nowhere to set it. And I'm holding it and I'm like this, and I literally couldn't read it now. It was so bad. And I said to Ben, I just went, oh my God. I don't know what. He's like, what? And I said, I'm so nervous, I'm shaking so bad I can't read this, and there's nowhere to set the script. I was like, can I just get these nerves out for a minute? He's like, yeah, take your time. I remember saying, no big deal, and I'm thinking, maybe not to you. No big deal, take your time. So I walked away and had the script in my hand. I just started going, and it got nerves, all that nervous energy, it got it all out. And I walked back over and I looked at the script and I was like, okay, I'm ready. And then Ben, there was a whole podium that he stood behind where he had all his knobs, and he came out from behind, he walked up, he said, give me the script, and he took this, and I handed him the script, and as he's walking away, I was like, oh my God, I just offended Ben Burt, I'm done, I'll never get another chance. He walked up behind the podium, and he turned around, and he said, you know what you just did over there? And I was like, what, like cackling and all, what I just did? And he's like, yeah, he said, I've got a creature that is gonna be perfect for, we're gonna forget Admiral Akbar, and let's do a bunch of that today. So, I mean, to me, it's like, that's pretty amazing. Like, even in that moment, Ben's mind is working, and he sees this goofy guy go over and act like that and go, well, he ain't no Admiral Akbar, but he sure is a salacious crumb. So let's do it, and next thing I knew, and what he did was, he said, he didn't have a picture or anything, he said, the character, this is a little creature, and he described him, he's part monkey, part bird, part rat. That's how he described it. And he said, so I'm gonna give you some scenes, and just to get different emotions, and I just want you to do gibberish and cackling and what you were doing, just make up words. And so then he described, to get different emotions, I'll do real quick, but this went on for like 20 minutes, a half hour. He said, okay, you're in the desert, you see a big castle, you're walking through the desert, you're hot, you're gonna sneak up to the castle, give me some of those sounds. And I just started, just doing, and ad-libbing, and then I get in the castle, but what I want to lead up to is the best part was, he says, I've snuck in, there's a giant in the castle, and we do a bunch of stuff. I'm sneaking around, there's a piece of cheese, I steal some cheese, I did that sound. But he says, okay, now the giant woke up, he sees you, he just caught you, he took the cheese away from you, he's holding you, and now tell the giant you want that cheese. So I'm thinking I'm mad and all that, and they're going, you know, and I know exactly what he used that. So when Salacious Crumb goes up to the ceiling after he's zapped, and after R2-D2 zaps him, and he goes up and he goes, what I'm really saying is, give me back that cheese. That's what I was really thinking. So, but I mean, for me, I mean, that's how it was. And then I went and saw the movie and knew right away who it was. Because Ben came up after we screened it in San Francisco, and he came up and he said, "Do you know who you were?" And I was like, "Yeah, I was that little guy with Java." And he's like, "Yeah, it's Salacious Crumb."
Did you ask Ben for the cheese?
And I give me my fucking cheese back. Yeah. No, I guess that's when I got my cheese.
Good gosh, which one do I pick? Which story? It was 70 times over 12 years. Okay, well, one interesting thing was when I was called in to do the special edition, I'd already been playing Vader for about 2 years for commercials and video games and things like that. But now I was going to get a chance to actually be in the movies. My favorite film series, I'm actually going to be part of my favorite film series. George is adding additional scenes to the original movies. And we were scheduled to shoot in June of '96. And the date we were scheduled to shoot was the same day that my daughter, my firstborn child, was due to be born. And it's like, they kept holding it open for me, and Don Bees from the Island Model Shop, was coordinating all of this, and she was my original Vader wrangler, and he keeps calling me, "So, baby born yet?" And it's like, "No, not yet." Thankfully, my daughter was born 2 weeks early, so I was able to do it. We shot all that stuff at the ILM on the sound stages there, on the blue screen stages. And for one of the scenes that we shot, it's a scene where Vader leaves Cloud City and goes to his shuttle, a big, beautiful matte painting by Ralph McQuarrie. And so we're on this sound stage, myself and some stormtroopers and an Imperial officer, and we were on a platform about as high as this tabletop is from the floor right now. But it wasn't much wider than this, it really wasn't. And it was very long, and we had to stride across this for this one shot. And the visibility in this mask is horrible. It's basically, you can see directly in front of you through the lenses of the mask, or you can see your feet through the bottom right here. That's it. Everything else is a blank spot. So we had to practice it several times with myself and the stormtroopers with our heads off, and you had to do kind of like muscle memory just to figure out, okay, how many steps can I take before I get to the end of this platform, and don't go too far to the left, too far to the right, otherwise you fall off. And so we practiced it several times with heads off, and then we shot it several times with heads on. You can't just, you can't walk with your head down looking to see but that's what I would have had to do to actually see where I was going. So I had to keep, head up, full stride and everything. And we shot it several times. On the very last take, they said, "Cut, don't move." And I was about a foot away, no, less than a foot, from the end of the platform. If I'd taken one more step, I would have hit the deck. I don't know if they were worried about me or the very expensive original costume. I'd like to think it was me that they were worried about. But that was just a really interesting thing to have to shoot, yes.
Eric, and by the way, man, he brought up a great point when I first met him earlier today. This is the first mace of Star Wars right here.
Yeah.
This is, so give it
Sorry,
up.
Sam Jackson.
Before you,
Go ahead.
but your character in his own right had such like a interesting look to him because he was almost like in an X-Wing flight outfit.
Yes.
And the world that you got to play in, and then in the sequel, Teeth got to play in,
Right.
is so uniquely Star Wars, but uniquely your two films. So I'm curious, like, what was your favorite part of that?
I had lots of favorite parts, obviously. Working on 2 films over 2 years and getting to live up in Northern California was nice. I thought maybe I might live there one day. It was so nice, but I'm a Southern California boy, but I can see why people want to live in Northern California. It's a beautiful area. Trying to think of there was lots of, being directed by George Lucas himself was great. A lot of people don't realize that they always said he didn't direct until he did the prequels, and for a lot of times people thought I was a liar, but now there's a picture in a book that's showing him directing me now, the new Star Wars Archives book, so it's proven.
Right on.
Being directed by him, seeing his style versus John Cordy was nice. He's very fast when he sets up a shot. He really knows what he's doing. You can kind of sense that he's editing it in his head as he's setting up everything. So he's just very fast at what he does. And the set, if you remember too, anytime he's on the set, it's moving like a lot faster when the boss is around. So that was kind of interesting. I don't know. I mean, working with him was great. Working with John too, which is a different type of director. He helped me get to an emotion in a scene. Just being a part of working with Lucasfilm, just in general, they're all very professional at what they do. And I've worked on many sets after that, and I still don't see that kind of. I don't see people working that way, like kind of family-oriented. Everybody knows everybody. They're playing jokes on each other. You don't see that too much, and that's one of the great things that George built up there at Lucasfilm, kind of a family atmosphere, and that's not said enough about the way everybody works up there. And a lot of the people that worked on the Ewok movies worked on Jedi, so that was great. And as far as filming scenes, if I would say, it was a really challenging role. I mean, I was very, very physical, so I had to train and do my own stunts and everything. Probably the hardest scene to do was under the water when Mace is trapped in the magic pond, because they shot that in a pool. I'm trying to not make this pop. Sorry about that. But yeah, that was challenging because I had to swim underneath this big, huge plexiglass, and I had to hold my breath when I'm pounding on it. So that was challenging. I don't know. I mean, there was a lot of great moments in those movies.
The camera work in that scene is, like, for someone who's gone to film school and knowing how complicated to do something like that is, that's super impressive.
That scene was actually shot by George Lucas under the water shots and everything. He was there on the set the last day that was shot. And I was the only actor on the set that day. So everybody else got left. And yeah, I remember even Warwick, I didn't even get to say goodbye to Warwick, so he wrote me this note, I still have it. Sorry I didn't get to say goodbye, And then we had a saying, so it was, you guys won't get this, but he said, scratch your neck. And that's because everybody was getting poison ivy, so everybody was scratching their necks on the set, so being in the redwoods. That was fun. A lot of fun adventures, that's for sure.
How about you, Nikki? Do you have a favorite day or a favorite scene?
Let's see. Well, an incident, a funny incident. Okay, so we're on the top of this bridge. So Teague was supposed to be a puppet, right? And they put me in it, so they added a lot more scenes with Teague moving and walking around, right? So we're shooting this shot, and it's in a movie. I'm on this side, and it's my POV, right? Thank you. It's my POV. Am I doing it? Okay. It's my POV over my shoulder. And here's the ravine. On the other side of the ravine is all the marauders. And they're like, they look like they're from the water. Because they're the same color, so it looks like they're like mountains coming alive and stuff like that. So, this was the second unit director, Joe Johnston. He's amazing, right? Well known Joe. Someone had the great idea of having me walk out of frame after they did my POV. And here's the ravine, I'm walking along the edge. Mind you, talking about not being able to see, right? Not the eyes, little slits underneath the eyes. Right? Yeah, so I'm like 16 years old. They tell me what to do. Okay, I'll do it. No questions. I don't have to go to school. And you have every cookie at craft service. Oh my God, right? I'm in. So, Joe wrote DUP on the slate. And that's what I learned what DUP meant, directed under protest. Because he was like, I don't know about this. We're getting up and walking out of frame. Sure enough, they set up like people with stunt pads right below me, a little bit here, but of course, I got up, walked right beyond where everybody was waiting for me, and just right over the edge, and just tumble down the ring, and all you can hear is, copper, ooh, you know, and tree branches breaking and stuff like that. So I get to the bottom, and I'm like on one foot, like I made it. I ended up on one foot, and then I fell, bam, face down into the water, the ring. So water's rushing through my suit. It's not that deep, but like it's so heavy. I'm like stuck in the water like that, face down. And the Marauder guys, they're all UCSF basketball players that they hired as Marauders. And one of them, little side note, Michael Fonte, I don't know if you Michael Fonte in the Spearheads, he's one of the Marauders. Yes, so all of a sudden they come up and just rip my head off, the Marauders, and I'm just like dazed and confused, and they still have their heads on. They're like, you okay? You okay? So it's fine, because I was young and flexible and just went with it. Wasn't hurt. They were a little bent about the whole thing. So the special effects guys painted a big bruise on my back. Yeah, right? I know. Mess with them. And of course the first unit directors said, oh, we heard what happened, are you okay? And I'm a minor too, you know. My parents weren't even on set. They signed me over to the studio. Teachers are like, So they're like, are you okay? And everything. I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. My back's a little sore though. And I pull up and his eyes just went like that, you know. I couldn't last very long. I started laughing. Before I was gonna have a heart attack, you know, so that was it. That was my funny little episode. There's plenty more, but
I've got one more question for you guys, and then we'll open it up to some Q&A. But I gotta know, just because it's not going to be, I think, for a long time, if ever again, I have somebody or a group like you guys on stage, and Lucas is from my hometown. So I gotta know, like, what is a favorite story or interaction that you have had, if any, that you would like to share about Mr. George Lucas? And we can start with Alan again.
With me, Mr. Lucas knew that the mask, you know, like Andrew said, we have to memorize where we're going to walk. And okay, there's a rock there, I'll avoid that. I fell so many times. And the mask that I was wearing broke the bridge of my nose and started to bleed. And at one point, I was holding the mask, and George said, okay, look, let him sit on the banther from now on. So I'm in there holding my mask and running, and George didn't like that. So I sat on Margie for the rest of the shoot. George was very kind. He says, okay, look, he's in pain. He's not going to jump anymore. And the funny thing is, Margie was in tune with me and knew that I was hurt. And she had a fit towards the end, because she could sense that I was in pain. And George said, okay, that's enough, cut. And that was the end of the filming.
So I used to see George come out to look at what we were building at the ranch. He and Marcia, his wife. George loved everything. Marcia always wanted things changed. I mean, that's the truth. They rebuilt. They were doing this in the main house. I don't know if that means anything to people, but this big main house. It's beautiful, Victorian, 50,000 square foot Victorian, incredible. They wanted this fireplace to look a certain way, like it had been through like it had withstood an earthquake. And oh my God, Marcia drove the masons, the guys who were building. She drove them crazy. Every time they get it done, and they think, oh, this is gorgeous, it's so beautiful. And then George would come out and love it, and then Marcia would be like, no, it's not right, tear it down and start over. And these masons were a filmmaker, right? So that's what they do. But masons don't build fireplaces and tear them down, you know, I mean, and keep doing it. I think they had to do it like 4 times. Those guys are going crazy. And I tell them, I'm like, dude, His job's, I mean, security, man. You're gonna be building this thing for years. You just get used to it. That was something that I saw a lot about. But for me with George, what happened was there was D23, the celebration at Disney, where it was at Disney World. And I went there when George was being inducted. I was invited, and I went. And I was back in the green room, and George was getting makeup, and it was so funny because I'm watching. The look on his face was like, oh yeah, he did not like what was happening. And they're doing makeup, and I remember him, the makeup girl, going, "That's enough. That's it. That's fine. We're good. We're good." She's like, "No, George." Like, "No, we're good." And he gets up out of the makeup chair. He's looking in the mirror. I'm kind of behind him. He comes walking towards me, and there's an old thing where it's like, "Don't talk to George. Don't talk to George." But I knew George. I would say hi to him at the Christmas party and at the 4th of July party out at the ranch. So, but I hadn't seen George since the 80s, since Jedi. And now here it is, a few years ago. He comes walking towards me, and I'm thinking, screw the no, don't say hi to George thing. I'm saying hi. And he comes, and he's walking towards me, and he's doing the George Lucas walk, which is kind of looking kind of down, always thinking. Yeah, he's thinking. So he's looking down, and I go, "George." Everybody looks like, "What are you doing?" And George looks up at me, and I go, "Hi, how you doing?" He goes, "Good, how are you?" Came right to me. Walks up to me, and I said, "George, I don't expect you to remember me, but I was the carpenter that ended up being the voice of Salacious Crumb for Return of the Jedi." And George went like this. "Salacious, how have you been?" I was like, "Oh my God." I remember, "Oh my God, George, I've been great." And I wanted to tell you all these years that part in that movie, I've been a voice actor ever since. I'm still working all the time. You gave me the most incredible life, and I wanted to thank you personally. And I just want to say thank you. You gave me a great life. And he said, I'm so glad you're telling me this. It really makes me feel good, and I really appreciate you letting me know." That's how humble George Lucas is, right? So, I mean, that was the best. That was amazing. It was amazing. And then Matt Wood walked in, and Matt goes, "Mark, what are you doing here?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'm here to see George get inducted. I thought it'd be fun." And then they start talking. Matt, his hair's turned white. And George says, "Oh, your hair get a little, what's going on there?" And he's like, "Oh, I learned it from you, George." They're both hair's white. And then I said, "Hey, Matt, you're working on the new Star Wars." George is standing right there. And I said, "The first thing I ever did professionally with my voice was Return of the Jedi." And Matt says, "Yeah, I know." And I said, "It'd be really great if I could be just something in the new movie, because I kind of feel like my career and life came full circle back from episode 67. And Matt looked at George, and I'm standing right there, and George goes, next thing I know, I get a call from Matt Wood to work on me. That's how that happened. So yeah.
Oh, how do I follow that one? I think one of the things that may not come across in a lot of the interviews with George, first of all, George is a regular guy. I mean, he really is just a regular guy. Mind you, he's a really, really rich regular guy, but you never know it. Because there's a reason why he lived in Marin County for so many years, because he could go to the mall, he could take his kids there, and nobody bothered him. He could just be dad. And at the mall, and people would see him, they go, "Hey, George," and that's it. I've been with George in Los Angeles, and forget about it. People are like ready to eat each other. "Oh my gosh, it's George Lucas." A lot of people don't realize when they were working on the original Star Wars attraction, George had to go to Disneyland and check it out and make sure everything was fine. And so that he wouldn't be mobbed, he shaved off the beard and mustache, and nobody knew who he was. He could walk right down Main Street in Disneyland. Nobody bothered him. But I would sit with George in dailies at ILM. I worked with him on camera and at different events and things like that. He was always just a really cool guy, just a regular guy. And I said this to his sister one time. I was doing a lecture at Modesto Junior College. George is from Modesto, and his sister lives in Modesto still. And she came up afterwards at after my lecture. I gave a lecture on how Star Wars and Lucasfilm changed the way that movies are made. It literally changed the whole system. And she introduced herself to me, and I said, well, how did I do? And she said, well, you described my brother to a T. And I said, I think the one thing that doesn't come across in interviews is how funny your brother is. George has a really good sense of humor. He would crack jokes in the middle of dailies. But he's also somebody, this is what really impressed me about George, is that he's not one of these my way or the highway kind of directors. He picks the right people and he lets them do what he picked them to do. And, you know, I mean, the big joke about George that his directing style is more, bigger. But he knows his stuff, and he knows when to step in and say something, and he knows when to let people do what he hired them to do, and that always impressed me. But he's always was kind to me. First time I had any kind of interaction with him, just speaking or whatever, we were doing a live event, and it was a big fundraising type thing. It was the opening of the Art of Star Wars exhibit in San Francisco back in, I think it was 95 or so. And I'm there to be Vader on stage with him. And we're doing a little run through, and George turns around to me and he says, okay, and I'd never spoken to George at this point. And he goes, okay, when this thing starts, as soon as we're done with this, the press is going to come right after us. So I tell you what, okay, I'm going to jump down the front of the stage, you jump down the back, we're going to run out to the back in the parking lot, we'll get in my car and we'll get out of here. Okay, George, sure. But that was his sense of humor, and he did that to put me at ease, you know, and that's what I like about George. He's just a regular guy.
Yep.
Testing, okay. I did have one funny moment with George Lucas when he was directing the reshoots. We were inside the Ewok hut, and Mace and Sindel are talking about going and rescuing their parents, and he has their life monitor that they got from the Gorak's pet Aura. And for whatever reason, I started having this hysterical laughing fit where you can't stop laughing. And it was because when I looked down, I suddenly got out of character, and I looked at George, and he was looking up smiling, and I thought he looked like an Ewok. So I just couldn't stop laughing, and he goes, and I went on, and I didn't want to say why, but I finally said, well, it's you look like an Ewok. So I don't know if they got that on camera, but hopefully they didn't. But that's my funny story of working with George. But he was real nice about it. Like everybody said here, he's just a regular guy, everybody. He puts on his pants the same way everybody else does. He does have different tastes. He always wears the same type of shirts, but that's okay.
Checkered flannel.
There you go.
Yeah.
Faster and more intense.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. So mine's a little different, but as all these gentlemen say, George is amazing. He is very low-key. He's got a real dry sense of humor, real funny. He actually wrote me a letter of recommendation for film school, a personal one, to UCLA. I didn't get in.
Are you kidding?
If I was going to USC, I'd be in like Flair, right? Exactly. I actually had Coppola write me mine from UCLA, right? So, anyway, just real cool guy. So, let's see. Working on the movie, make friends with people, make friends with the still photographer. She had a daughter my age. We became buddies. Barbara Lincoln, yeah. So anyway, we're at Barbara's house. Barbara's not home. She lives right over the hill from George in San Anselmo, right? It's his house. We had a party. Barbara's daughter and I.
Great parties.
Right?
That was incredible.
So she had an R2D2 cookie jar that I guess was only given, for Christmas, a certain year, a collector's item. The top of the cookie jar got broken at the party. Oh, yeah. So we're like freaking out. Her daughter and I were cleaning the whole house the next day. We're trying to glue back the R2D2 thing. Finally she's like, you gotta do it, Nikki. Just go up to George's door. These are, mind you, teenagers, like thinking I'm gonna go knock on George's door and get another R2D2 cookie jar. We did. We did. And he's not even on security cameras. It's very discreet. And if you don't know, it's not gated like in LA or whatever, but it took a while. They just thought we were crazy kids. I'm sure they're looking at the camera, and I'm speaking to the camera and begging to open. They did. Opened it, found, like, not right away. I think he was just like, oh my God, these kids are crazy. You know, and he remembered me. He opened the door because he saw me on camera. He remembered. He actually remembered my name, too. That's what's such a trip about him, right? You think that he doesn't remember or know when he made my face. Nope. He knows your name, everything like that. So, also, too, they brought up real quick, you talked about nothing half-assed, that rang a bell in my head. You will never, or you should never see a picture of somebody half in costume and half out.
Never.
Never. That's a big no-no. Yeah, right? Like, so it was all or nothing. Like the Ewoks thing, you have to have no pictures. But anyway, George came through, and we got the call from, remember, I want to say Jane May.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And got it to us, the cookie jar. We thought we were all cool about it, whatever. But Barbara found out that, like, so I hear ya. So the R2D2 cookie jar, George came through for it.
I remember those R2.
Do you?
Yes, I remember those cookie jars. I had one. I don't know whatever happened.
Yeah, they were like special.
Oh, yeah.
But,
Yeah, they were.
Love stories are a great way. Unfortunately, we did go a little bit long, but all this panel of great guests will be back at their tables. You guys are more than welcome to come up and talk to them. But thank you guys very much for taking the time out. This has been a dream come true. I mean that sincerely. This is awesome. So thank you for taking the time out. We are going to try to get a group shot of the panel in front of the stage. So we just kind of ask you guys that you give us a little space to do that. You guys are great, and you always do. Just got to say it because it's the end of the panel. So thank you very much for coming. We thank you guys very much for taking the time to be part of this panel. Give it up for them.